The colony of New Dawn was small compared to the giant worlds of the galaxy. It had no famous cities, no powerful fleets, no rich leaders. Only normal human families lived there. Farmers worked in wide green fields, miners dug deep into the mountains. Children played under artificial blue skies created by weather towers. Life was peaceful. Far away from the wars and politics of the galaxy, the people of New Dawn believed they were safe. But safety in the galaxy never lasted forever. On the morning everything changed. 7-year-old Mia Trent was drawing stars on the kitchen table while her father prepared for work. "Dad, do you think Earth looks beautiful from space?" she asked happily. Her father smiled. "More beautiful than anything," he answered, before Mia could reply. Every light inside the house suddenly turned red. Unknown ships detected. The peaceful morning disappeared instantly. Outside, loud emergency sirens echoed across the colony. People rushed into the streets, looking up at the sky in confusion. Then they saw them. Dark shapes appeared above the clouds. Huge warships covering the sunlight itself. One ship became 10. 10 became hundreds. The sky looked black. Fear spread across New Dawn within minutes. Inside the colony command center, Governor Elias Trent stared at the giant alien fleet on the main screen. His officers looked terrified. "No military warning," one officer whispered. "They came out of nowhere." "Identify them," Elias ordered calmly, even though fear was growing inside him. Seconds later, the answer appeared: Zyran Empire. The room became silent. Everyone knew the Zyrans. They were one of the strongest empires in the galaxy. Cold, ruthless, and proud. But New Dawn had never threatened them. The colony had no defenses strong enough for war. A communication request suddenly appeared on the screen. Elias took a slow breath. "Open it," he said. The image of a tall alien appeared before them. His pale silver armor reflected the lights of the command room. His face showed no emotion. "I am Commander Vaylor of the Zyran Empire," the alien said coldly. "This colony now belongs to us." Elias frowned. "New Dawn is a legal human settlement recognized by the Galactic Council," he replied. "You have no right to attack us." Commander Vaylor stared at him silently for several seconds. Then he answered, "The galaxy belongs to the strong." A chill moved through the room. "You have 1 hour to surrender," Vaylor continued. "If you resist, your colony will be erased." The transmission ended immediately. One young officer looked shocked. "They can't do this," she whispered. But Elias already understood the truth. The Zyrans had not arrived for peace. They had arrived for extermination. Emergency alarms spread across the colony. Families rushed toward underground shelters, while workers attempted to prepare evacuation ships. But there were too many civilians, and not enough time. Mia held her mother's hand tightly as crowds pushed through the streets. "Mom, what's happening?" she asked nervously. Her mother forced a weak smile. "Everything will be okay," she lied softly, above them. Giant Zyrane warships moved silently through the clouds like monsters waiting to strike. Inside orbit, Commander Vaylor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the helpless human colony below. One Zyran officer looked uncertain. "Commander," he said carefully. "Scans confirm the colony has almost no military forces." Vaylor showed no sympathy. "Then their destruction will be quick," he answered. Exactly 1 hour later, the attack began. Without warning, giant beams of blue plasma fell from the sky. The first strike destroyed the northern city instantly. Buildings disappeared in oceans of fire. Roads cracked apart. Entire neighborhoods vanished in seconds. Screams filled the air everywhere. People ran through burning streets while explosions shook the planet continuously. Mia and her mother reached an underground shelter just before another blast destroyed the buildings behind them. Dust and smoke filled the tunnels as terrified civilians cried around them. Far above the planet, the Zyran fleet continued firing without mercy. Hospitals burned. Schools collapsed. Spaceports exploded before evacuation ships could launch. New Dawn was dying. Inside the command center, Governor Elias watched the destruction helplessly. Every defense system was gone. Every communication tower destroyed. One officer turned toward him with tears in her eyes. "Sir, "We're losing everything," she whispered. Elias looked at the burning world on the screen. Then he gave one final order: "Send the emergency transmission to Earth." He said quietly. The officer hesitated. "If Earth sees this—" "I know," Elias answered. The message was transmitted across human space immediately. "New dawn has fallen, civilian colony destroyed. Requesting all human response forces far away, across distant stars." Human systems received the message one after another. On Earth, hidden military stations suddenly came alive. Ancient warships powered on deep beneath mountains and oceans. Secret fleets emerged from darkness after years of silence. And inside a classified underground command center beneath Geneva, High Admiral Marcus Kane opened his eyes slowly as the message played before him. He watched the burning cities of New Dawn in silence. Then he asked only one question: were children killed? Nobody answered immediately, because everyone already knew what would happen next. Finally, one officer whispered quietly, "Yes, sir." The admiral stood up slowly. His face became cold as stone. Then he gave the order that would soon terrify the entire galaxy. "Wake the sleeping fleets," he said quietly, "and erase the Zyran Empire." The galaxy celebrated the destruction of New Dawn. Across Zyran space, giant screens showed burning human cities again and again. Crowds gathered in streets cheering for their military. News channels called it a glorious victory. "The humans are weak," one Zyran announcer said proudly. "They hid at the edge of the galaxy like frightened animals." Inside the massive capital world of Zyran Prime, Commander Vaylor walked through the Grand Hall of Victory while senators praised him for the attack. "You ended the human problem before it could grow," one senator said proudly. Vaylor nodded calmly. But something still bothered him. The humans had not answered. No threats, no angry speeches, no demands for revenge, only silence. And deep inside, that silence felt wrong meanwhile. Far away from Zyran territory, humanity had already begun preparing for war. Deep beneath the icy mountains of Earth, hidden doors slowly opened for the first time in decades. Massive underground shipyards awakened from darkness. Ancient warships powered on one after another, their metal hulls covered in dust from years of silence. Thousands of workers moved quickly through giant military hangars, while warning sirens echoed endlessly. The sleeping fleets were waking up. Inside Command Fortress Geneva, High Admiral Marcus Kane stood before a giant holographic map of the galaxy. His officers waited silently for orders. Every face in the room looked tense, because everyone knew the truth. Humanity had not used its full military power in over 70 years. Most species believed humans were peaceful traders now. A divided civilization too focused on politics and business to fight large wars anymore. That illusion was about to end. Admiral Kane looked at the burning image of New Dawn displayed before him. 50,000 civilians dead, children, families, entire cities erased. "The Council knows about the attack?" Kane asked quietly. "Yes, sir," an officer replied. "They refused to interfere." Kane's eyes became colder. "Of course they did," he murmured. Another officer stepped forward nervously. "Sir, the Zyran Empire controls over 300 systems," he warned. "Their fleets outnumber ours almost 4-1. Kane turned slowly toward him. "Numbers do not win wars," he answered calmly. Then he activated another hologram. The room became silent instantly. Hidden across the map were thousands of red markers. Secret human bases buried inside dead moons, forgotten planets, and dark regions of space. Many younger officers stared in shock. They had never seen this network before. "The galaxy believes humanity became weak," Kane said. "We allowed them to believe that." One officer looked confused. "Sir, why?" Kane's face remained emotionless. "Because peaceful people sleep better when monsters stay hidden," he answered. At that exact moment, across human space, encrypted military signals spread faster than light. Code black. Total mobilization authorized. On Mars, giant factories immediately switched from civilian production to military construction. On Titan, hidden defense cannons emerged from beneath frozen ice. And in deep space, Enormous black warships slowly moved out of dark shipyards where they had waited for decades. The ships looked terrifying, long, sharp, and completely silent, designed for one purpose only: war. Back on Zirin Prime, Commander Vaylor finally received the first report that something was wrong. A nervous officer entered his chamber quickly. "Commander, we lost contact with Outpost 17, he said. Vaylor frowned. "A malfunction?" "We believed so at first," the officer answered carefully. "But now 3 more stations have disappeared." Vaylor stood slowly. "Disappeared?" "No distress calls, no survivors, no debris," the officer whispered. "It is as if the stations simply vanished." For the first time since the attack on New Dawn, Vaylor felt uneasy. Hours later, another report arrived. Then another. Entire patrol fleets were going silent near the outer systems. Ships disappeared without battle. Military stations vanished from sensors. Fear slowly began spreading through the Zirin military. But nobody understood what was happening. Then the first video arrived. The recording came from a damaged Zirin scout ship before communication was lost forever. Inside the military command center, Vaylor watched the footage carefully. At first, the screen only showed darkness, then shapes appeared. Massive black ships emerging silently from empty space. No warning signals, no communication attempts, no visible weapons, only darkness moving through the stars. One terrified Zirin pilot screamed through the recording, "Human ships!" A second later, the screen exploded into static. The room became completely silent. One officer spoke carefully. "Commander, those ships do not match any known human designs." Vaylor stared at the frozen image on the screen. Then he finally understood something terrible. Humanity had hidden its real strength. And now it was coming, far away, aboard the human flagship Nightfall. Admiral Kane stood alone inside the observation chamber, staring at the stars. Behind him, thousands of warships followed silently through deep space, entire fleets hidden inside the darkness between systems. One young officer approached carefully. "Sir," she said quietly, "our fleets are ready." Kane did not turn around. "Do the Zirins know fear yet?" he asked. The officer hesitated. "Yes, sir." Kane finally looked back at her. "Good," he answered coldly. "They gave fear to our children first." Then the giant human fleet entered hyperspace together and across the galaxy. Entire stars began disappearing behind the shadows of approaching human warships. The war had officially begun. Fear spread through the Zirin Empire for the first time in centuries. Entire patrol fleets had vanished without warning. Outer colonies stopped responding one after another. Military commanders demanded answers nobody could give, and worst of all, the humans still had not spoken publicly. No threats, no official declaration of war, only silence and disappearing stars. Inside the Imperial War Chamber on Zirin Prime, Commander Vaylor stood before a giant holographic map filled with red warning signals. His officers looked exhausted. "Report," Vaylor ordered coldly. A female officer stepped forward nervously. "We lost contact with Sector 12 3 hours ago," she said. "Defense stations, fleets, mining colonies, all gone." "Destroyed?" Vaylor asked. The officer swallowed hard. "We don't know," she whispered. "There are no survivors." The room became silent again. Vaylor stared at the map carefully. The attacks were too precise, too organized. The humans were not attacking randomly. They were hunting. Another officer activated recovered footage from a destroyed Ziran battleship. The recording shook violently as alarms screamed in the background. Darkness covered the stars outside. Then massive human warships appeared silently from nowhere. No bright lights, no proud military symbols. Only giant black ships moving like shadows through space. One terrified Zirin captain shouted through the recording, "Target their engines!" But before the Zirin weapons could fire, thin red beams cut through the battleship instantly. The ship split apart like paper. The footage ended in static. Several officers looked disturbed. "These are not normal human ships," one whispered. Vaylor already understood that. Humanity had hidden its true military power from the galaxy for decades. And now the truth was finally appearing. Meanwhile, deep inside human territory, the mood was completely different. There were no celebrations, no speeches, no cheering crowds, only anger. On Earth, millions watched the footage of New Dawn burning again and again. Parents held their children tighter. Workers stopped talking during broadcasts. Entire cities became silent with rage. Humanity was united for the first time in generations, not by hope, but by revenge. Inside the flagship Nightfall, Admiral Kane stood in the tactical command room, surrounded by holographic battle maps. A young officer approached carefully. "Sir, Fleet 3 has reached the border systems," she reported. Kane nodded once. "Any civilian traffic nearby?" "No, sir." "Good," Kane answered calmly. "We are not monsters." That sentence surprised several younger officers, because what humanity was doing already looked terrifying enough. Kane turned toward the giant star map. "Target military worlds only," he ordered. "Shipyards, defense stations, command centers." One officer looked confused. "Sir, why not attack their cities?" The Admiral's eyes became cold. "Because they attacked ours first," he replied quietly. "And they will learn the difference between humans and animals." Hours later, the first official human assault began. Without warning, 3 giant human fleets appeared above the Xeran military world of Karthos. Panic spread instantly across the planet. Defense alarms screamed through every city while Xyran warships rushed into orbit. But the humans moved faster. Dark human destroyers entered formation silently while massive carrier ships released thousands of attack drones into space. The battle lasted only 11 minutes. 11 minutes. That was all it took for humanity to erase one of the strongest military bases in the Xyran Empire. Orbital stations exploded like burning suns. Defense fleets were torn apart. Shipyards vanished under storms of plasma fire. And through the entire battle, the humans never transmitted a single word. Inside the collapsing command station above Karthos, a terrified Xeran officer stared at the battle outside. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No species fights like this." Another explosion shook the station violently. Then every screen suddenly changed at once. A human face appeared, Admiral Kane. The room became silent immediately. Kane looked directly into the camera with emotionless eyes. "You attacked civilians on New Dawn," he said calmly. "You burned children alive." Nobody inside the station spoke. "You believed humanity was weak because we desired peace," Kane continued. "That was your first mistake." The station lights flickered around the terrified officers. Then Kane leaned slightly closer toward the screen. "And your final mistake," he said quietly, "was teaching humanity to stop showing mercy." The transmission ended. 3 seconds later, the entire station exploded. Across the galaxy, panic finally began spreading beyond the Xeran Empire. The Galactic Council watched the destruction in horror. Species that once mocked humanity now whispered fearfully about the hidden human fleets moving through space. One council senator spoke nervously during an emergency meeting. "How many ships do humans actually possess?" Nobody answered because nobody knew. Humanity had hidden its military for too long. Back aboard the Nightfall, Admiral Kane received updated casualty reports from Karthos. One officer looked relieved. "Minimal civilian losses, sir," she reported. Kane nodded silently. Then another transmission arrived suddenly. It came directly from the Xyran Emperor himself. The room became tense immediately. Kane accepted the transmission. A massive alien figure appeared on the screen wearing dark royal armor. The Emperor's eyes burned with fury. "You dare attack my empire?" He growled. Kane remained calm. "You destroyed New Dawn," he answered. "It was one colony," the Emperor snapped angrily. "Nothing more." Several human officers looked furious, but Kane simply stared at the alien ruler silently for several seconds. Then he spoke softly. "That," he said, "is exactly why your empire is about to die." The transmission ended immediately and far beyond the borders of the Xyran Empire. Even larger human fleets were already moving through the darkness toward their next targets. Humanity had finally gone to war, and the galaxy was beginning to understand how terrifying that truly was. The galaxy had seen wars before, For thousands of years, empires fought over planets, trade routes, and resources. Worlds burned, fleets crashed, and soldiers died. But what humanity was doing felt different. Cold, precise, relentless. The humans were not fighting for territory. They were not demanding peace agreements. They were not asking for surrender. They were removing the Zyran Empire piece by piece. And nobody knew how to stop them. 3 days after the destruction of Karthos, fear spread through every Zyran system. Military convoys rushed across space. Defense stations activated emergency shields. Entire worlds prepared for invasion. But the humans never attacked where expected. They moved like ghosts. One moment their fleets appeared near the eastern sectors. The next moment, entire military bases vanished near the core worlds. No warning, no mercy. Inside the Imperial Palace on Zyran Prime, Emperor Zarok slammed his fist against the command table. "This is impossible," he roared. "How can humans cross our borders so easily?" Around him, terrified officers avoided eye contact. Finally, Commander Vaylor stepped forward carefully. "They are using hidden jump routes," he explained. "Routes older than the Empire itself." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. How would humans know ancient military routes? Vaylor hesitated for a moment. Then he answered quietly. "Because humanity fought in wars long before the Zyran Empire existed." Silence filled the chamber. Many younger officers had forgotten that truth. Humans were not a young species. Long before joining the Galactic Council, humanity survived centuries of brutal wars on Earth itself. Then wars between planets. Then wars between stars. Peace had not made humans weak. It had only made them patient. Suddenly, alarms screamed across the palace. One officer turned pale while reading the incoming reports. "Your Majesty," he whispered, "we lost contact with Draven 6. The room became still. Even Emperor Zarok looked shocked. Draven 6 was not just another colony. It was one of the largest Zyran military production worlds in existence. Millions of workers built warships there every day. Entire oceans had been turned into giant factories. How many human ships? Zarok demanded. The officer swallowed nervously. "That's the problem, sir," he answered softly. "Scanners show only one." Everyone stared at him in disbelief. "One ship?" Vaylor repeated. Before the officer could answer, emergency footage appeared on the giant screen. The image showed Draven 6 from orbit. At first everything looked normal. Factories covered the planet. Defense fleets surrounded the atmosphere. Then the stars above the planet suddenly disappeared. A giant black object slowly emerged from hyperspace. It was enormous, far larger than any ship the galaxy had ever seen. The human vessel blocked sunlight across entire continents. Its dark metal surface looked ancient and scarred by countless battles. One terrified Zyran officer whispered, "What is that thing?" No one answered. Across Draven 6, panic spread instantly. Defense cannons opened fire first. Thousands of plasma beams struck the giant human ship. But nothing happened. The attacks disappeared against invisible shields. Then the massive ship moved slowly forward, and a deep human voice echoed across every communication channel on the planet. "This is human dreadnought Eclipse." The voice sounded calm, almost emotionless. "You participated in the destruction of New Dawn." Inside Draven 6 command headquarters, officers shouted desperately while trying to prepare defenses. "All fleets attack now!" One commander screamed. Hundreds of Zyran warships rushed toward the giant human dreadnought. Then the Eclipse fired once, only once. A single beam of white light crossed space silently. Every ship in its path vanished instantly. No explosions, no debris, just emptiness. Fear exploded across the Imperial Palace as the footage continued. The Eclipse moved closer toward Draven 6 while entire Zyran fleets died around it. Planetary shields activated immediately. Millions of civilians watched the dark ship from the surface below, terrified beyond words. Then the human voice returned once more. "Humanity remembers every child you burned." The giant ship began glowing with strange energy across its surface. Commander Vaylor suddenly understood what was about to happen. His face turned pale. "Evacuate the planet," he whispered. But it was already too late. A massive wave of white energy erupted from the eclipse and struck Draven 6 directly. For 1 second, the entire planet became brighter than a star, then everything disappeared. Factories, cities, mountains, oceans, Draven 6 was gone. Only burning debris remained where the world once existed, inside the Imperial Palace. Complete silence filled the room. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. An entire planet had just been erased. And the humans had done it using one ship, far away aboard the Nightfall. Admiral Kane watched the operation report quietly. One officer looked disturbed. "Sir, over 8 million died," she said carefully. Kane closed his eyes for a moment. Then he answered softly, "So did the children on New Dawn." The officer lowered her head silently. At that exact moment, emergency broadcasts exploded across the entire galaxy. Species everywhere watched the destruction of Draven 6 in horror. The Galactic Council entered full panic. Trade routes shut down. Civilian fleets fled from Zyran territory. And for the first time in modern galactic history, people began asking the same terrifying question. What happens when humanity stops trying to be civilized? After the destruction of Draven 6, the galaxy changed overnight. Trade worlds became silent. Civilian ships avoided major space routes. Entire alien governments entered emergency lockdown. Fear spread faster than war itself. For years, most species believed humans had become soft, a peaceful race more interested in diplomacy and trade than combat. Now the truth was standing before the galaxy like a nightmare waking from sleep. Humanity had never become weak. It had simply stopped showing its teeth. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, chaos filled the giant hall. Dozens of alien representatives shouted over each other, while emergency screens displayed burning Zyran systems. The humans are out of control. One senator yelled, "You allowed the attack on New Dawn." Another shouted back, "We never expected this response." At the center of the chamber, Council Speaker Valoran slammed his staff against the floor repeatedly. "Silence," he ordered. Slowly the room quieted. Valoran looked exhausted. His skin had turned pale from stress. "We need immediate negotiations with humanity," he said carefully, "before this war destroys the entire galaxy." One senator laughed nervously. "Negotiations?" he asked. "The humans are not even answering our transmissions anymore." That was the most frightening part. Humanity had completely cut communication with the Council. No diplomats, no demands, no speeches, only war. Meanwhile, inside Zyran territory, things were becoming worse every hour. Entire military sectors had collapsed. Supply lines were gone. Defense fleets disappeared before even seeing their attackers. Human ships moved through deep space like predators hunting wounded prey. On the heavily defended world of Shartoros, millions of civilians watched emergency broadcasts with growing terror. A young Zyran boy looked at his father nervously. "Are the humans coming here too?" he asked softly. His father tried to smile. "No," he lied quietly. "The Imperial fleet will protect us." But deep inside, he no longer believed that himself. Far above the planet, hidden behind a dead moon, hundreds of human warships waited silently in darkness, inside the flagship Nightfall. Admiral Kane studied the holographic map carefully. His officers stood around him silently. One younger commander finally spoke. "Sir, civilian evacuation has started on Shartoros," he reported. Most military leaders already fled the planet. Kane's expression remained cold. "Cowards always run first," he answered quietly. Another officer looked uncertain. "Sir, many civilians there had nothing to do with New Dawn," she said carefully. Several officers looked nervous after hearing her words, because everyone knew Kane's anger, but to their surprise, the Admiral nodded slowly. "Then civilians will be allowed to leave," he said. The room became quiet. "Sir?" the young officer asked, confused. Kane looked directly at the burning image of New Dawn still displayed beside the tactical map. "We are hunting the Empire," he said calmly, "not innocent people." That sentence spread quickly through the human fleets, and for the first time since the war began, some officers finally understood something important. Humanity was angry, terrifyingly angry, but there were still limits even now. Hours later, human fleets surrounded Shartoros completely. Panic exploded across the planet immediately. Emergency sirens screamed through cities while civilian transports rushed desperately toward orbit. Then every screen on the planet suddenly changed. Admiral Kane appeared before billions of frightened Zyrans. The room behind him was dark, his face emotionless. "Civilians have 6 hours to evacuate," he announced calmly. Fear spread instantly through the population. One reporter inside the Zyran capital whispered shakily, "Why would humans warn us?" Nobody answered, because nobody understood humanity anymore. Inside the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zarak watched Kane's message with burning hatred. "He mocks us," Zarak growled. Commander Vaylor stood nearby silently. But deep inside, Vaylor felt something else: shame. Because the humans had shown more mercy in war than the Zyrans showed at New Dawn, and he knew it. 6 hours later, millions of civilians escaped Shartoros successfully. Then the humans attacked. The battle was fast and brutal. Human warships appeared from every direction at once, while hidden drones disabled planetary defenses within minutes. Zyran fleets fought desperately, but humanity's tactics felt impossible to predict. The humans fought like they had already seen every battle before it even started. Inside one collapsing Zyran cruiser, alarms screamed while fire spread through the hallways. A wounded officer looked at the battle outside in horror. "How are humans doing this?" he whispered. An older commander answered weakly from the floor beside him. "Because they were preparing for this war long before we started it." Minutes later, the last military defense around Shartoros collapsed completely. Human forces captured the planet instead of destroying it. That shocked the galaxy even more. The humans could have erased the world like Draven 6, but they didn't. Instead, they arrested military commanders, destroyed weapon factories, and released civilian prisoners held by the Empire. Across alien news networks, public opinion began changing rapidly. Species once afraid of humanity now started questioning the Zyran Empire itself. Then another shocking report appeared. Human soldiers had discovered secret prison camps hidden beneath Shartoros. Thousands of prisoners from conquered species were found starving underground, children included, inside the prison tunnels. Human medics carried weak alien survivors toward rescue ships while shocked cameras recorded everything. One rescued alien woman stared at a human soldier with tears in her eyes. "Why are you helping us?" she asked weakly. The human soldier looked exhausted. "Because somebody should have helped New Dawn," he answered quietly. Hours later, the footage spread across the galaxy, and suddenly, millions realized something terrifying. Humanity was not simply destroying the Zyran Empire. Humanity was exposing it. And with every new victory, more species began secretly supporting the humans from the shadows. While far away on Earth, hidden deep beneath the mountains of Geneva, Admiral Kane received a classified message marked highest priority. His eyes narrowed as he read it silently. Then for the first time since the war began, real anger appeared on his face, because the message contained one horrifying truth. New Dawn was not the first human colony the Zyrans had erased. The war changed direction after the discovery on Shartoros. At first, the galaxy feared humanity, but now many species were beginning to fear the truth even more. The Zyran Empire had hidden terrible secrets for years: secret prisons, mass executions, entire alien populations erased without records. And now humanity was uncovering everything. Still, one question continued haunting Admiral Kane. If New Dawn was not the first colony destroyed, then how many others had disappeared? Deep beneath Geneva Command, Kane stood alone inside a dark archive chamber. Old military records floated around him in blue holographic light, while artificial intelligence systems searched through classified files. An intelligence officer entered carefully. "Sir," she said softly, "we found something." Kane turned slowly. The officer activated a hidden file marked Restricted Level Omega. A single name appeared on the screen: Colony EDEN-12. Kane's eyes narrowed instantly. He remembered the name. 20 years ago, Eden-12 had vanished near the outer rim of explored space. At the time, The Galactic Council blamed pirates and solar storms. No survivors were ever found. The case was buried and forgotten. Until now. Play the recovered transmission, Kane ordered quietly. Static filled the room for several seconds. Then a terrified human voice spoke through the speakers. They're attacking civilians. This is not piracy. Please. Explosions echoed loudly in the background. People screamed somewhere nearby. Then another voice appeared. Cold, calm, alien. Leave no witnesses. The recording ended suddenly. Silence filled the chamber. Kane stared at the frozen screen without moving. The voice belonged to Commander Vaylor, 20 years ago, before New Dawn, before the war. The Zerans had already destroyed human colonies in secret, and the Council had hidden it. The intelligence officer looked pale. Sir, there's more, she whispered. She activated another series of files. Missing colony reports appeared one after another across the room. 7 human colonies, 7 entire populations erased over 2 decades. All near Zeran territory, all covered up. Kane slowly closed his eyes. For years humanity believed those people were lost accidents. Families waited for answers that never came. But now the truth was finally standing in front of him. They were murdered. Meanwhile, far inside Zeran space, panic continued spreading through the Empire. Entire systems had surrendered without fighting. Military officers abandoned posts daily. Even loyal citizens were beginning to question the Emperor. Inside the Imperial Palace, Emperor Zeruk looked exhausted for the first time in his life. Dark circles covered his eyes while emergency reports surrounded him from every direction. The humans have taken another 5 systems, one officer reported nervously. Our western fleets are gone, another whispered. Commander Vaylor remained silent beside the throne. He could already feel the Empire collapsing around them. Then an emergency transmission interrupted the chamber. The Galactic Council demanded immediate communication. Zeruk accepted angrily. Council Speaker Valoran appeared on the screen looking terrified. You must surrender, Valoran said immediately. The humans are preparing something larger. Zeruk slammed his hand against the throne. I will never surrender to animals. He growled. Valoran's expression hardened. You still don't understand, he answered quietly. The humans are no longer fighting for revenge, the Emperor frowned. Then what are they fighting for? For several seconds, Valoran said nothing. Then he answered softly, Judgment. The transmission ended. Far away aboard the Nightfall, Admiral Kane prepared humanity's next operation. Hundreds of officers moved to the command center, while giant tactical maps displayed the Zeran core worlds ahead. One young officer approached nervously. Sir, the fleets are asking for confirmation, she said carefully. Are we truly moving against Zeran Prime? The room became silent instantly. Zeran Prime was the heart of the Empire, one of the most heavily defended planets in the galaxy. Attacking it meant ending the war completely. Kane looked at the tactical map quietly. Then another officer rushed into the room suddenly. Admiral, he said breathlessly, we intercepted a classified Zeran transmission. Kane turned toward him immediately. Show me. The transmission played across the command screens. At first it sounded heavily damaged. Then clear words finally appeared. Project HFY approved. All evidence must be erased before humans arrive. Prepare planetary sterilization. Several officers looked confused, but Kane's face turned deadly cold, because he understood immediately. The Zerans were preparing to destroy their own worlds. Millions of civilians would die, all to prevent humanity from uncovering more secrets. One officer looked horrified. They would kill their own people? She whispered. Kane answered without emotion. Empires always burn themselves in the end. Seconds later, emergency alarms suddenly echoed across the Nightfall. A communication officer turned pale while staring at her console. Sir, she whispered shakily, we just received a priority distress signal. From where? Kane demanded. The officer looked up slowly, fear visible in her eyes. Earth, she answered. The entire command center froze. Then another message appeared immediately after. Unknown fleet detected inside Sol system. For the first time since the war began, humanity itself was under attack. And somewhere in the darkness near Earth, thousands of enemy warships were already moving silently toward the homeworld of humanity. The message from Earth did not arrive as panic, it arrived as silence inside the nightfall. Every officer froze as the warning repeated across the command screens. Unknown fleet detected inside Sol system. For a few seconds nobody spoke, because Earth was supposed to be untouchable, hidden, protected, guarded by ancient defense networks no enemy should ever find. Admiral Kane slowly stepped forward. "Confirm location," he said in a calm voice. A tactical officer replied immediately. "Multiple hostile formations entering the Sol outer belt, sir. Estimated strength." "Unknown." Kane's expression did not change, but inside the room, tension rose sharply. One young officer finally spoke. "Sir, how did they find Earth?" No one answered, because the truth was simple. The Zurans had been desperate enough to search beyond reason, and now they had found the one place they should never have touched. Earth, inside Zyran command remnants, scattered across different systems. Commander Vaylor stood watching the same report with shock. For the first time in the war, even he looked uncertain. "Earth is not a military world," one officer whispered. "It is. Their home." Vaylor's eyes narrowed. "That is exactly why they went there," he said quietly. Meanwhile, above the solar system, space itself began to change. Dark shapes appeared near Neptune's orbit, then more near Saturn, then more near the outer asteroid belts. Zyran warships, hundreds of them. They had not come to fight fleets. They had come to break humanity's heart. Inside the Sol defense network, alarms finally triggered after decades of silence. Hidden platforms under Mars activated automatically. Ancient orbital cannons unfolded from behind asteroid fields. Silent human defense stations awakened across deep space. On Earth, people had no idea what was coming. Cities continued their normal life. Markets were open. Children were in schools. Traffic moved through streets like any other day until the sky changed. A government emergency broadcast interrupted every screen on Earth. Unknown hostile fleet detected approaching solar system. Panic spread instantly. People stopped in the streets. Cars froze on highways. Skies filled with confused silence. Inside a hidden command bunker beneath the Himalayas, Earth Defense Council members rushed into emergency positions. An officer shouted, "They are entering inner orbit." Another replied, "Defense shields are activating." Then a third voice, trembling, estimated enemy count. "Over 800 warships." One council member whispered, "We cannot stop that many." At that exact moment, a new voice entered all Earth communication channels. Calm, controlled, familiar, Admiral Kane. "This is not a drill," he said firmly. "Civilian populations must remain indoors." Across Earth, billions listened in fear. "This is Humanity Command," Kane continued. "Earth will not fall today." Inside the nightfall, Kane turned toward his fleet commanders. "Activate Sol Protocol," he ordered instantly. Something changed across the system. Hidden human warships began emerging from deep space shadows. Ancient defense fleets awakened from frozen orbits. Weapon systems older than modern civilization came online within seconds. The Zyran fleet suddenly realized something terrifying. They were not invading Earth. They were walking into a trap. Commander Vaylor received a final transmission from his forward scouts. His hands tightened as he read it. Human supercarriers detected behind asteroid belt. Multiple fleets emerging from hidden fold space docks. Estimated enemy strength. Uncountable. Vaylor's face turned pale. For the first time he understood. Earth was not a homeworld without defenses. It was a fortress pretending to be a planet. Inside Earth orbit, the first Zyran wave attacked. Plasma fire filled the sky as alien ships opened fire on orbital stations. But human defenses responded instantly. A silent wall of energy surrounded Earth, absorbing entire salvos without breaking. Then the counterattack began. Human fleets moved with impossible speed. Black warships emerged from nowhere and struck with precision. Zyran ships vanished one after another without warning. Inside a burning Zeran cruiser, alarms screamed while systems failed rapidly. A young officer looked outside in terror. "What are those ships?" he shouted. An older commander answered quietly, "I think they are what the galaxy forgot humans could be." Minutes passed, then hours. The battle above Earth became one of the largest space engagements in galactic history. But something strange was happening. Human ships were not just defending, they were controlling the battlefield. Every Zeran movement was predicted. Every attack was countered before it began. Every escape route was cut off instantly. It was not a battle, it was execution by strategy. Inside the Nightfall, Admiral Kane watched the battle in silence. An officer approached carefully. "Sir, enemy forces are collapsing," she reported. Kane nodded slowly. Then another transmission arrived. It was not from the battlefield. It was from Zyron Prime. Emperor Xerak appeared on the screen, his face full of rage and fear. "You have turned Earth into a weapon," he shouted. Kane looked at him calmly. "No," he replied softly. "We always were the weapon." Xerak's expression twisted in anger. "This war will destroy both our species." For a moment, Kane said nothing. Then he spoke quietly. "No," he answered. "It will only end yours." The transmission ended. And far above Earth, the Zyran fleet finally broke formation. They were retreating, but it was already too late. Human fleets had surrounded them completely. And for the first time in the war, humanity prepared not just to fight, but to finish it.